Hello? Urban Tribes by Ethan Waters. I picked this book up because I want to deal with Generation X. So if you can see it, this is dealing with Generation X. I also picked up this book. Maybe I'll do this, read from this next week. Generation X and the Chameleon Personality. But this week we're going Urban Tribes. And there was a chapter in here I'm going to read from because the relationships are trash. They're garbage. And the relationships between men and women are bad, particularly in our community. And let's do the reading and we'll get into it. Women and the marriage delay. Things that change precipitously from one generation to the next. Let me turn on my volume. This is really low. Okay, now you can hear me. Women and the marriage delay. Things that change precipitously from one generation to the next are usually greeted by the older generation as the death of everything good and right. This was certainly true of the fact that a whole cohort of women were not getting married as promptly as their mothers did. The facts were certainly dramatic. The proportion of never married women between 20 and 24 had doubled in 30 years, while in the same time the proportion of never married between 30 and 34 had tripled. With the swelling pitch of civic emergency sirens, men and women of religious and political virtue stepped forward as the millennium turned to express their deep concern, outrage, and our indignation over this trend. The fact that fully 40% of adult females were single proved that we were suffering a titanic loss of family values, wrote Robert Stacy McCain in the Washington Times, adding that today's young women appeared indifferent to traditional notions of marriage and morality, and they should be. We must allocate more resources to understand these trends, wrote Rutgers researchers, who coincidentally benefited from the resources allocated to understand these trends, because marriage contributes to the physical, emotional, and economic health of men, women, and children, and thus to the nation as a whole. An article in Time magazine asked whether picky women would end up denying themselves and society the benefits of marriage, and wondered excitingly whether this would mean an outbreak of Sex in the City promiscuity. Now, the problem will start with my community first. The problem with my community is black men have never had stable employment, ever. Maybe periods, fractions of us have, but as a group, never. But the community would do other things to make up for what white institutions weren't doing. A lot of the things you use, Uber, we used to do that. Uber and Lyft, we used to run people around and run errands. I've said it before. We had something called numbers, illegal numbers, which spread money in the community. That was another thing. Men took care of the block, repairing houses, fixing stoops, cleaning the block, whatever the case may be, to put money from, because a lot of black women always had some kind of work. Even if it was just days' work taking care of white children and cleaning the houses, money was coming in. Men worked in warehouses and things like that. So the men that did work, and money spread. And we also had things like little clubs, little juke joints, little restaurants. We had rent parties. So we had basement parties where you come in, you give a little money, you buy drinks at the basement party, so you fund somebody. We had all these kinds of things. But all those things are gone. All those things are gone. And black men are suffering. Some places like 60-70% of the black men are unemployed. And women need help. The problem, though, is it's not that they don't have family values. They have values, but no one wants to do the social and political work. No one wants to take on that social and political beast to say you must treat these men like human beings. No one wants to do it because no one believes we're human. Black women don't believe we're human, fully human. Other black men don't treat each other like we're fully human. White liberals think we're 4/5. White conservatives think we're 3/5. Immigrants do the same, and we treat each other like 2/5. That's the way. That's the problem. Now, you have other communities that have this problem too. Maybe you were in an industrial community and it fell apart. The factories left, whatever. Now factories left in the 70s and 80s. So now you're talking about 2 generations now of men struggling. And maybe when women went to school and got an office job or whatever the case may be, worked for the government some kind of way. And these men, again, got left behind. Now, what women have to deal with, if you're just going to throw men away or level up, first of all, that leveling up, there's very few. So now you get into a situation where you're sharing men, the men who actually have real resources. And what are you doing with the others? So there's a lot of factors that go into why. And some of these family values that they're talking about weren't really real values. It was women being, from their point of view, our women always worked. There never was a time when black women didn't work. And all women work because keeping the house, well, say we work. Keeping the house is work. So when we say things like a universal basic income, women should have gotten paid to work. And in Venezuela, one of the programs that they ran was mothers got minimum wage for staying home and raising their children. It's work. You can compensate it, right? Now, when the idea of a job is breaking down, we're doing digital work, we're online, we're working for apps. So that traditional thing is not, we're not stuck in that so much anymore. Some people still are. Some young people are, which is weird. When I meet a young person that's trying to get a tradition, I'm like, why? Just sell something on the internet. Do something on the internet. I mean, and especially the jobs that young people used to get, old people have them. Remember, young people were the only ones doing fast food when I was young. I could never get those jobs, though. I never understood why. Scurrilous politicians looking for easy scapegoats went as far as blaming these women for imminent demise of Western civilization, of course. Absent the sudden desire of the part of Western women to begin having the same size families as their grandmothers and future belongs to the third world. Patrick J. Buchanan writes in his book, The Death of the West, only the mass reconversion of Western women to an idea that they have to give up the good life lies in bearing and raising children and sending them out into the world to continue the family and nation can prevent the death of the West. The death of the West will have nothing to do with women. It has to do with you colonizing and brutalizing everybody and everybody getting sick of it. In the first years of the new millennium, anger and distrust, these women ran like a low-grade fever throughout our culture. When articles came out about 30-something women who worried about finding someone to marry, they got little sympathy. These women were falling prey to the perfect person problem, reported Michael Broder, a psychotherapist and author of The Art of Living Single. And waiting for the perfect man, they were overlooking men with whom they might be happy, and they gave the relationship a chance to develop. We are throwing it. I mean, black women are throwing black men away a lot. It's your right to, but it's never a good thing to have this many men discarded. When I was in the shelter and sleeping on the train and stuff, and watching these men, listening to them, sometimes talking to them, you realize I'm really worried for women. I have a lot of black women in my family. I'm really worried for black women because there's a lot of us that just been trashed, just been tossed in the trash. And the bitterness that comes with that. And even some men who make it, quote unquote, who have stability, who have been dumped or been what they feel like done, really been dumped and thrown away by the woman, baby mother, whatever it is. There's a bitterness, and it's really, really dangerous. It makes me think of Handmaid's Tale. And what people don't realize about Handmaid's Tale is, yeah, you have the theocrats who started the society, who put women in secondary citizenship and all that. Then you had maids, and you enslaved the fertile women. But no one pays attention to the guards. All these men in the street with guns, making sure the women are not plotting when they're walking to the market and all of that. That's all these bitter black men that's out in the street sleeping on the benches. Do you know if someone came to us and said, here's a gun, here's some lodgings, here's a stipend, keep whoever it is in place, women, immigrants, whoever you want to do, if they deputized us, you'd have a whole force of bitter, angry men. So that's something you got to keep in mind. Similarly, when surveys of these mature single women revealed that a significant number of them still hope to have children, reporters from magazines, newspapers, and television show nearly trampled each other to deliver the news that fertility starts its most dramatic decline at 30. A nurse told me that. Actually told a bunch of us that. How could these women, the commentary accompanying this news went, have thought that they could ignore nature? Nature meaning the biology of conception, but also, I think, slyly implying a woman's nature, i.e., as a mother. It took no reading between the lines to see a smirking satisfaction at the news that these women would pay for having turned their back on marriage and family for too long. And then again, there goes that bitterness. There's a lot of bitterness in this world. And when it comes out, it's going to come out and shoot in so many different, well, it is shooting in so many different ways. And it's getting to the point where it's almost reached a point where you're not going to be able to stop it if you don't enact the policies that you need to enact. You need to do something about housing, and you need to do something about a stipend or UBI. Now, I saw Biden was going to do a $400 a month, but you would get it during tax time. So I don't know if he's just talking or somebody in his camp is saying, look, we have to move toward this. The powers that be know we have to move toward this. Because that's really who's running the country. Politicians are not running it. They never really, well, they did run stuff when they were George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. Politicians work for the ruling class. That's it, period. And if you think your politician's working for you, you don't understand what this society is. And the ruling class knows that they're not going to be able to enjoy themselves if the rest of us don't have stability, period. You're not going to enjoy your museums. You're not going to enjoy your dinners out. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy it. So you're going to have to do something about it. And yes, you're going to have to take some of us in your neighborhoods. So the best thing for you to do is get involved in the rental process. If you live in a neighborhood where you don't want certain people in with housing vouchers or low income housing, or give up a certain land, certain area. In New York City, there's no space left to build. A lot of empty apartments, though. So, hit the links if you want to support. Donate directly, and my shorts have been kind of a little bit popular. I've been doing these little video poems that I enjoy, doing that to keep some peace of mind. We'll be back. I think the next reading will be behind the paywall, but this week, Urban Tribes. We'll continue reading from this chapter. And then next week I'll read Masculine Mirrors, Generation X and the Chameleon Personality. Until next time, take care of yourselves and be safe.